So, I have my fancy head unit. But this video is going to be more about how I actually fitted it, because it was a pain in the ass essentially, and I don't know if it's just specifically this unit or if it's all of them, but the wiring for this 2008 Crafter was completely different from the normal ISO wiring that you'd get, and Kenwood and Pioneer and other stereo units, head makers, manufacturers would expect it to be. I think that's the same for most of this age, but I don't know exactly which ones. So anyway, this is a Kenwood DMX something or other, and yeah, as you saw, it's got the reversing camera input. So I've fitted a tail light, a new tail light with a camera on top of it, and that's plug and play. That's fine basically. That takes the LED strip out of the existing camera, existing tail light at one above the doors. You kind of unclip that out, clip it in the new one with the camera, and then put it back in, and then all you got to do is run the video, or run a lead back to the front of the cab. It's got DAB and Bluetooth and all that jazz, but I'll take out the power so I can show you what I've done. So, so I'll just pull it out and we can see all the connections and stuff. So this is the cable that I was on about, that runs from the camera on the back of the van, and then you have this little adapter which you then plug on, and that is where you then connect your AV in. So this yellow one goes into the back of this particular model, but whatever head unit you have, or similar sort of setup really, you just plug it into that. Then it has a power. So the way that this works is the camera needs obviously power to power up, so the power for the camera runs through this single feed to the back of the van, so you don't have to run multiple things. You don't have to run a video lead and a power lead. So the way that I've hooked this up, this setup, and the way the power goes through works perfectly well. Most people, I think, are probably going to want to have the power for the camera either coming from somewhere in the front of the van, like an ignition switch 12 volt feed, which will power the camera all of the time when the ignition's on. That's the way that I've done this. The other way of doing it is where you take the power from some sort of reversing switch 12 volt feed. Most people do it and steal it from like the reversing camera light. Also, all the wiring harnesses that run through one of those wires there will be the wire that feeds that, so you could pinch it from here, but finding out where that is a pain in the arse. So most people, the kits that you can buy, you can chop and change how you power the lights, or how you power the camera, even by either running connection to that the positive on the parking brake, or the reversing light, or by putting it through to here. This particular kit that I've got, because you don't have like a 12 volt splice coming off this, and the only way that you can power the lights is by plugging, you could plug this accessory lead, so this end, into the lead on at the back, but then you have no way of, you'd have to run a very long single AV line. That's the way I guess you'd do it. Anyway, enough about that. I've explained that really poorly. The way that I've done it, as I said, is to power it all the time with ignitions on. So power comes through to the front here, And then in this particular model, this is the FAF that I had, I don't need the like the adapter harness, essentially, because this is a 2008 Crafter, Sprinter, whatever, and it's already got the ISO connections on it. So I thought, oh great, so I just plugged it in, and it worked, powered on, it's fine. I didn't have the ignition in, the keys in the ignition. I was playing around with it, and I just thought, oh, I'll just turn on the ignition and see where I can then find this reversing switch feed from. And it then turned off, which was really weird. And after doing a lot of googling around, essentially what the difference is the wiring for the standard ISO connectors is different than the one that Volkswagen and Mercedes do on the Crafter and Sprinters, specifically on this age anyway. Usually you have I mean, you can find the pinouts online, so it's probably better just to look at them, to be fair, but essentially what the difference is you have a continual power, 12 volt all the time, it's the yellow wire. You have a ground, which is the black wire, and then you have a switched 12 volt, that's the one that comes from the ignition, so when the ignition's on, that gets power. On the Volkswagen they have this thing called a CAN bus, I really don't know what it is, but that's the way that the old stereo, essentially, even though if you took the keys out of the ignition, would continue to be on, and you have to manually turn it off. I think it does turn off after a certain amount of time to stop you from draining the battery, but essentially I just plugged the standard setup into the back of this, and that was screwing it up. It wasn't delivering 12 volts correctly when the keys were in, so thus it wasn't turning on. So what I've had to do is snip the back of the ISO cables quite a lot, in fairness. I can't bother to take it out. So pins 7, I think it is. Again, look it up online to find the exact one. Pin 7, I've cut and connected it to my switched 12 volt feed, which I have then taken from the cigarette lighter. So I've taken the back of the cigarette lighter out. That only gets power when the ignition's on. I piggybacked off that rather than going to like a fuse box or something like that, an additional one, because it's just a faff to run the wires. That goes into pin 6. Pin 7. Pin 6 is the illumination feed, so that's when you put your lights on, it dims the display slightly. Again, on the Volkswagen one, that again is on that CAN bus system, and I wasn't really that bothered about dimming the setup, so I've just sort of ignored that for now. I will have to run another wire anyway for the AM feed. I don't have another connection, so I'm going to have to take it out again anyway, so if I really want that done, if it annoys me that much, I can do that. So that's what I've had to do on that. Now that works. On this particular model you then have your reversing sensor feed, so that's the 12 volt feed that then becomes live when you're in reverse, and that's what then tells the system to turn on the reversing camera. That I've got from my switch that I've got here, which is for the the reversing bleepers, the noise of that. Usually when it's standard, and it's fitted standard, you can put into reverse, take it out and put it back in again, and that will turn off the noise. But someone's retrofitted it, the person that had this van before me, on it, and it was just on all the time, and that really pissed me off. So the first thing I did when I got the van was snip that and ran power, I think it's these wires, back from the back of the van to this switch so I can turn it on or off. So then what I've done is the live feed from that I've spliced again and put it to the reverse, so that's that. The parking switch is supposed to go to the ground for the handbrake, and because Megan might be sitting in the van and wanting to do something, it seems a bit silly to just have the head unit sort of partially not functioning just because I'm driving. So I won't be playing around with it, but you know, Megan wants to change the map or something, we have to stop to do that. I don't see a problem with her being able to do that, she's not the one driving, so that's on there. That's essentially that. So most of the faff was around the ISO stuff. Once you've figured it out, it's a piece of piss really, apart from trying to find where the connections go, because again, this 2008 Craft, you don't have a switched ignition coming to the radio like most ISO connections would, so you have to go away and find that. Other than that, I'm happy with it. So I'm going to try and put it all back in, and put all the facing plate on, and essentially see what I don't and do need. I'm fairly certain that if you're going to do this on a 2007 Crafter, you don't need 2008 Crafter or Sprinter, sorry. You don't need this sort of harness loom thing, because one, whatever block that is, doesn't fit the ISO connections that are in this van. They seem to come standard, so that's pointless. So yeah, I'll in the description give a list of everything that I brought, like the fascium plate stuff. This particular model's got DAB. Most probably head units that you're going to buy will. So again, you need to buy a new aerial, because the one in the Crafter just does AM and FM. So that's the old AM aerial feed, which you probably could repurpose, but on the other end the connection's completely wrong, the fitting. So unless you can find an adapter for that, you're going to have to just run a new wire anyway, which is what I'm going to do because it's probably cheaper and easier. You've got power, so this particular aerial is powered from the ISO connections off the back, so that was already pre-existing, so all I've done is cut that off and then soldered it on, and then yeah, DAB, FM radio and GPS. So we're going to put it all back on, and then I'll show you what that looks like. And it's finally in. Had a lot of faffing around. Looks quite good, happy with it. Quick update, essentially what I didn't need out of the kit that I brought. The van is an absolute mess. Next thing is to sort out that. Is the harness, as I said earlier on, and the antenna adapter. I do still need an adapter, one of those, but what I've actually done is I've hooked up the FM/AM to the cable that already runs to the back of the old head unit, and then what I need is an adapter from the old style to one of those. So hopefully I can send those back. There's a few bits that I brought that I didn't actually need, but yeah.